The Church of Scientology, one of the largest and richest new religious movements, is being sued for $1 billion by former members for fraud and breach of trust. They regard Scientology as a dangerous cult. Yet the church goes on expanding, making converts, and claiming it is the road to total freedom. St Hill Manor in West Sussex, the British headquarters of the worldwide Church of Scientology, where parishioners study the works of L. Ron Hubbard and undergo a form of psychotherapy called auditing. Scientologists everywhere claim benefits from the techniques Hubbard called Dianetics and point to their success in curing drug addiction. The church's headquarters are in Los Angeles, where its leadership proclaims its message.
Scientology is a tool that people can use in their life to achieve their dreams and their goals. It can help people find work when they can't seem to find any. It can help people eliminate stress in their life. It can help people become more self-confident. And with these tools, people can achieve their dreams. And you know something? 6 million people around the world that consider Dianetics and Scientology to be their religion have found that it has helped them do that.
In Britain, Harold and Mary Clark see it differently. They feel they have lost their 24-year-old daughter Ruth to Scientology. Since joining the church, their daughter has broken with her family and become a stranger.
My daughter has changed so completely as a result of being in Scientology that we now no longer know the person she has become. Whereas she was a happy, loving, sparkling girl whom it was a joy to have about the house, she's now become a cold automaton who can't think outside the mental straitjacket that she's in because of Scientology.
I don't believe how evil Scientology can be.
Ruth Clark worked here with other young people at Scientology's London shop, one of 20 Dianetic centres in Britain. Like other new religious movements, such as the Moonies, Scientology has been accused of wildly exaggerating its membership, using mind control techniques to extort high fees, and breaking up families. But these movements nearly always operate within the law. Last year, her family actually kidnapped Ruth Clark and took her back home, but could not alter her beliefs. Ruth escaped from Norfolk and returned to the Scientologists and the teachings of Lafayette Ron Hubbard. Cyril Vosper describes himself as a deprogrammer. Families with grown-up children in the new religions ask him to try to change their minds. When Mr. and Mrs. Clark kidnapped their daughter Ruth, Vosper was sent for. He failed then, but with many others has succeeded. An ex-Scientologist himself, he brings his understanding of their methods to his deprogramming sessions.
How much money have you spent altogether in Scientology?
About £2,000.
How long did it take them to get the £2,000 out of you?
No, about 3 days.
About 3 days? Yeah. That's good going, isn't it? And what was your rate of...
Scientology has been vindictive towards ex-members, hence this girl's request for anonymity. Vosper has witnessed a proliferation of what he sees as religious cults, but in his view, the most dangerous of them is Scientology.
I think it's probably the worst because it's the biggest and it's got more money. It's been around longer than the other ones have, and therefore it's got its act together better. And I think it basically should be stopped, but it won't be stopped in the United Kingdom. The government here and the authorities here don't appear to give a damn.
In Los Angeles, the leaders of Scientology dismiss Cyril Vosper's critical views by attacking him personally.
Poor Mr. Vosper is a man who left his wife, left his children, refused to support them, left many debts. The church took up the wife's cause, took up the children, so forth. Mr. Vosper is also a known kidnapper of individuals. If you choose to call it deprogramming, I think the word is more a question of kidnapping for profit.
We're talking about adults.
Yes.
People like myself, Reverend Gents, people like John Travolta, Chick Corea, Karen Black, Nicky Hopkins, the 6 million Scientologists across the world that have found in Dianetics a solution to their problems. We're talking about adults. This is not Nazi Germany. And what happened there should have taught us a lesson. And that is that man has a right to believe as they choose. And the 6 million Jews that were killed should have been enough of a lesson that we should have learned that by this time man should at least have the conscience to allow other people to believe as they choose. Adults. And that's what we're talking about, is adults. And we're talking about a terrorism that was perpetrated by Mr. Vosper that is unconscionable.
Scientology today is a multi-million-dollar business. Dianetics are the psychological techniques invented by its founder. They promise enhanced intelligence and better health, and thus Scientology became a huge commercial success in America, where people yearn to improve themselves. But the initiation process is unusual. Becoming a Scientologist entails undergoing a series of training drills designed to instill confidence and obedience.
Stand up.
Acknowledge it as loudly as you can.
Thank you.
Command it as loudly as you can.
Sit down on that chair.
Good. Acknowledge it as loudly as you can.
Thank you.
Good. Command it as loudly.
These ex-Scientologists are demonstrating the drill of shouting orders at an inanimate object to develop what they call intention. The mark of a good Scientologist, wrote L. Ron Hubbard, is a fixed, dedicated glare. That look must be maintained even through the drill they call bull baiting, having to listen to a barrage of insults. If the subject reacts in any way, she flunks or fails.
You make me so mad, I'm not going to drink my tea. Not good. Flunk.
Laugh. Start.
Well, I fell down.
In this drill, the wired-up tin cans detect the electric charge in the subject's hands.
And there I was screaming and crying, and my mother came out of the house. And
The so-called auditor can discover those topics that excite or upset the subject from the needle on a galvanometer that Scientologists call the E-meter. By pursuing those topics, the auditor can make the subject talk about suppressed fears or worries. That produces a feeling of gratitude and euphoria. Session will follow session, and dependency is created. It is a perfectly genuine, if crude, form of psychotherapy. Scientologists even talk through experiences they believe they had in past lives, as they approach the condition known as clear.
my abilities to handle life are better. I'm not subject anymore to bad feelings of the past, see? Auditing help you to get rid of that bad feelings of the past and be able to feel in present time and confront the future and live a better life. That's what I get out of this.
But auditing is largely administered by people unqualified outside Scientology, and there's deep antagonism between Scientologists and professional psychiatrists. Dr. Louis Jolyon West is one who is deeply skeptical about auditing's value.
What good does a session with the E-meter do?
The E-meter doesn't do anything. If you buy one, you can be sure you paid too much for it. The E-meter is a gadget used by the purveyors of hocus pocus to make what they do and say seem respectable because here's a piece of machinery plugged into the wall.
Doesn't the needle genuinely represent a moment's emotional charge, say, in the subject?
The needle moves back and forth as the electrical changes in the skin take place, and all sorts of things can cause them to fluctuate, like a hunger pang, or a need to go to the bathroom, or an intrusive thought about someplace else you'd rather be, or a bit of bad breath on the part of the auditor who's bending over you, or a twinge of guilt on account of what you just said. If you can't sort that out, then whether or not you have an E-meter, I would say, makes no difference at all.
Scientology was accused of practicing psychiatry without a license. In 1954, it became a church and adopted the costumes and titles of Christian ministers.
It was a real farce, if you will. I was in there. I had to become ordained. I mean, I was Reverend Franklin Friedman, but I mean, I never used it in any religious manner. In the church, it's a big joke. I mean, they joke about it all the time, how they fool the public thinking that we're a religion, etc., etc. It was LRH's idea to do that. The purpose was to give the public the image that this was a church. And the Scientology organization is the farthest thing from a church I've ever seen.
But it's called itself a church since the 1950s, and its founder is treated with religious devotion. Most new religious movements have a guru and author of their sacred texts, and Hubbard is Scientology's. The church stands by all the claims he made about himself. He was a science fiction writer who reportedly quoted George Orwell in saying that if a man wants to make $1 million, he should start